Tig, I'm so like smitten. I'm so happy that you're here. I'm like, this is amazing.
I'm happy to be here. I'm
I'm,
actually on an island in a cabin outside of Seattle. So that's actually where I am right now.
of course you are, because you're fabulous, and then you would do something fabulous like that. Well, we're happy to have you here, and I've known your work, but I don't know, and I want to like dig into your journey a little bit more.
Hmm.
So, how does one grow up to have the courage to get on stage and do comedy? It's like so opposite of how people feel about what feels safe, like to just be yourself and be in front of all these people. When did you know that that was something you're like, I'm going to do that? And when did it start to break for you?
Well, I mean, I wanted to, I followed comedy my whole life. We watched SNL and stand up and um, different sitcoms, and people in my family are really funny characters. And I thought that it seemed really cool to do stand up. That was what really spoke to me, more so than sketch or acting. But yeah, it was just some crazy. Wouldn't that be cool to do? And then I remember in seventh grade, my friend who lived down the street from me, she told me that her mother said, um, Tig could be a comedian or should be a comedian. And I remember it being a moment where I felt seen and validated in this way,
Yeah, you sure
um,
were.
because I was just essentially a class clown up until that point. And it felt like, and I don't even know how serious her mother was, but it was a moment where it struck me, and I just was like, oh my gosh, it was the most flattering and exciting and electrifying thing I'd ever heard. And in fact, what's funny about my friend's mother is that all these years later, I was probably 13 at the time, and I'm 50. Um, my friend follows my career, and her mother does, and they've been to my shows, and I've told them that that was a big moment for me. But my friend has a much younger brother, and he was in the car with their mother one day listening to, I think, NPR, and I came on, and he was laughing at something I was saying, and she said, you know you grew up down the street from her. And he was like, no, I didn't. He had no idea that he had ever met me, or that his mother had made such an impact on me all those years ago.
That's
But
really, really special and hysterical at the same time.
yeah, and it wasn't until I was probably 24 or something, I saw a documentary, like a behind the whatever type VH1 type thing on Roseanne Barr. Um, I was living in Denver at the time, and she's from Denver, and I was watching it, and I remember turning to my girlfriend at the time saying, I would love to do that. And I think it's the first time I really verbalized it.
So
And
what were you doing then before? So were you like, what were you doing? Serving ice cream? Were you working in an office? What were you doing before you started doing stand up?
I worked in the music business. I am, I love music. I play music. Um, but yeah, I thought that was a more realistic
Realistic, yeah.
world for me, even though it's not even that
No,
quote unquote realistic.
so competitive. Yeah.
But I worked for record labels and marketing companies, and I worked with bands, and just did whatever I could to be around music. And so I just didn't think being a stand up comedian was at all within reach.
And then you went on to not just be a stand up comic, but you're like one of, you're as successful as it, like, this is it. This is it. This is what it looks like. So, you, you did it, when you look at your career, it looks very effortless, but you had to like get on stage and figure it out. And so what was that like? Can you remember the first, like that season of the first 6, 7 times you got up and how it felt, and how did you like just do that? That's a big thing to do.
Um, it was a big thing. My good friends that I grew up with, they were moving from Denver. We we followed each other around from childhood. I mean, I basically followed them around. They had their hopes and dreams and college years, and I just went wherever they went to college. I would go crash on their couch or live with them, and so I just moved wherever they went, and then they wanted to move to LA to get into TV and film, and so I was like, well, I guess I'm moving to LA now. Um, and it never interested me as much as music and stand up interested me. Moving to LA didn't, and but following my friends did, and so we all moved to LA. And as soon as we got to town, I saw in the local paper, the entertainment paper, all the different places you can do stand up. And that really struck me because in Denver at the time, which was 25 years ago now, there was the local comedy club where you could get on stage, but that was hard to get on stage. I didn't understand how to make that leap. Like, how do you want to do stand up, and then how do you become a stand up? And they have an open mic night, but I had heard that the club gave feedback at open mic night, and they decided whether you would come back or not. It just all sounded very intimidating, and so I never did it. And then getting to LA, you can get on stage in a bar, in a coffee shop, in a laundromat, in somebody's backyard. It just didn't matter. And so what's
Yep.
crazy to me is that
That's
people
funny.
think my, you know, beginnings are so outrageous because I started in Los Angeles. Um, and they think it's intimidating. Whereas to me, being in a city where there's fewer options, and again, there's way more options now in every city to do stand up, but 25 years ago, it was way less. And so seeing the stage time available in Los Angeles made it feel like I could fly under the radar and nobody would know. Whereas in Denver, it felt like people would know I was trying and they'd be giving feedback. So I asked my friend Beth, I said, I'm going to go check out every show that I can watch for 2 weeks in a row, and I'm going to see if it feels like I could do this. And she said, yeah, I'll come with you. And so we went night after night after night to clubs and coffee shops and bars, and on the 2 weeks to the day, I got on stage at a coffee shop, and it was so exhilarating. And it was also horrifying because I had only been talking to myself in my studio apartment in the mirror, and I hadn't accounted for laughs. Oddly, that was the last thing I even considered. And
Right.
so when I got laughs, it scared me. It was so scary. It was so startling. But it was exhilarating, and I've been going, except for the pandemic, I've been going ever since. And I was
Yeah.
sick for a little while,
Yeah.
but
You haven't stopped.
mm-mm.
Um, you said the word before, like if my friends, I was trying, and you're one of those people that, like, to me, you just are. You just don't try. Like you are funny. Like, and I think part of it is like you're so real. I feel like, and even in your book, like it's just very congruent. It's like, here I am I'm not trying. I'm not trying to make you laugh. I just am this.
Well,
Um,
that's nice.
well, that's the truth. And I think you're also very, very likable. So I think people like you right away. And they're like, I really like her. And then when you are funny, it's like, I'm so glad she's funny because I liked her. I wanted her to be funny. But um, but I'm sure even given that, it's it can be sometimes that it's tough, or people don't laugh, or you get to a certain place and then you get knocked down. So I think resilience and courage still comes into play. Like, even if you're naturally great, there's
Mm-hmm.
courage that's needed. And so many people who write into this show are like, well, something good happened, but then something hard. And so I stopped. And it's like, it's very
Mm-hmm.
easy for people to sort of like exit stage left when there's like so much in there. So I'm curious how you've dealt with, or if you can remember a moment where you felt resistance, but you pushed forward and you kept doing it.
Well, I mean, I felt resistance in many different areas and ways over the years, but I also, it was mixed in pretty equally with support. And, I felt like the open mic comedy scene was very supportive, and it's just friends that haven't, or acquaintances that haven't really made it to any degree. And I don't know, it just felt like a very supportive scene that was fun to be a part of, and kind of my first social scene in Los Angeles aside from my childhood friends. And I mean, I got pushback for, I mean, I couldn't get representation. I didn't have an agent until 4 years ago. I didn't have an agent until I was on the second season of One Mississippi. I had a booking agent for stand up,
That's
but
insane.
I didn't have an agent. But I wasn't sought after because I think people saw me as, oh, she's low energy, whether they thought this or not, but, gay, low energy. I wasn't like 20 high energy, hot girl, and not to say that that's everyone that makes it. But people would tell me that, oh, you'll likely end up becoming a writer on a TV show.
Mm-hmm.
You're not a headlining draw. Middle America won't tune in to you on Thursday nights at 8. I've heard all of those things over the years, and I think I believed it, but I also loved stand up so much. Oh, and my delivery was too slow, and I didn't have enough jokes per minute for late night. And so I think that even though there was that feedback, I loved stand up so much that I just thought, well, I mean, if that's my future, that's fine, but I'm going to keep doing stand up, it didn't really have any bearing on whether I was going to do stand up or not, because I just loved it so much. And I was on stage 5 to 7 nights a week.
It's amazing. It's hard to believe, but not really. But all
Mm-hmm.
those comments, it's like you were like, "Oh, she's too low energy," or whatever. I was like thinking about Stephen Wright, like somebody saying this, you'll never make it.
Yeah,
No, it's
yeah,
so
yeah.
slow. You're so like, it's like
Right,
what's what makes it so good.
right.
But that's the thing with you. It's like weebles wobble, but they don't fall down. I feel like you are so who you are that it was just kind of like a fait accompli. It was like, I'm just going to keep doing this. So you can do whatever, like this will be, because it
Yeah,
is,
yeah.
because it is like,
Right.
I never read The Secret or whatever that stuff is, but there's all
Mm-hmm.
these people like, I want to manifest, whatever they say. And it's like, we don't attract or whatever what we want. It's like, we attract what we are. Like, it's
Mm-hmm.
just things that happen that we create. It's not what we want, it's what we are. And I
Right.
feel like you just are you without this like this limited sort of, oh, but you, how do you stay in that place, that like place of center?
Well, I that's all very nice to hear. And I do feel that way. And I do feel that it's also been a lot of different iterations of me becoming more and more myself and comfortable with who I am and what I want. And um, I often go back to the fact that I was raised by a mother who encouraged me to tell people to go to hell if they had a problem with me. And so I think that when you
Wow.
have that sort of, and believe me, my mother was not a perfect person, but when you have that type of foundation and support to fall back on, and it's not that she was trying to encourage me to just walk around with my middle finger in the air, but just like, um, although if it was appropriate, she would support that. Um, yeah, I think that that really shaped me. I mean, it's impossible to not shape me. To for my mother, if I came home and said, "Oh, this person did this person said this, or this happened," a lot of times was, "Well, they can go to hell. You tell them they can go to hell. And if they have a problem, they can talk to me, but they can go to hell. If they're going to say that, they're going to treat you that way." And so it was it has to be a huge part of what makes me who I am.
It's so powerful. And what I love about it is without even knowing that story, you are a stand for that. I feel like
Mhm.
what you resonate, I feel that way about myself after
Mhm.
seeing you perform. Like I've seen you
Mhm.
many times in LA. I walk out without you saying that. That's how I feel.
Mhm.
And we've had so many different guests on the show, and one of the themes that's come up is this belonging. People are so we we will choose belonging over authenticity,
Mhm.
basically,
Yeah.
because we don't want to be cast aside. We want to be liked so badly. And this wanting to be liked thing, we had Bronnie Ware here who wrote The Five Biggest Regrets of the Dying. And she's like, people's biggest regret is like, because of what they might say, because of
Mhm.
what they might, how they might react, whoever they is,
Mhm.
I didn't live life on my terms.
Yeah.
And how awesome and giant that the belonging started for you with belonging to yourself.
Mhm.
That like
Mhm.
I can't try to belong to you and then I don't now I belong to no one. If I belong to you but I abandon myself in order to
Right.
belong to you, then there's nothing. And that is like almost the opposite of what everybody is up against. I think
Yeah.
everybody's giving away
Mhm.
they just abandon themselves in a thousand ways.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what a gift that you can be that for people.
Yeah, I mean, and a gift that my mother gave to me.
Yep.
No, I'm very thankful and aware of it. Very aware.
And I feel like in your book, first of all, the title is the best title of any book. It just is. I'm just a person. It's my favorite title. I've said that it's the best title. I'm just a person. And you talk about so many things so candidly, so raw. And then you you started to talk about these things on stage as right. Do you want to talk about that part of your life and how that almost like opened things up to a whole nother next level for you?
As far as when I got sick and my
And
mother
you just
died.
were like, and then you just started getting on stage like, hey, good evening. I have this disease. Anyway, how are you? It's like you just were who you were.
Yeah, I mean, it was I went back and forth a bit because I felt very compelled and I felt, you know, obviously taken down many
I can't
notches
even
by
imagine.
life. Um, because in a 4 month period of time, I had pneumonia,
Ugh,
and then I had this intestinal disease that's very deadly, called C. diff, that was eating my insides, to put it lightly. And then I got out of the hospital, and a few days later, my mother tripped and hit her head, and I had to fly home to take her off life support.
oh my
And
God.
and then my girlfriend and I split up right after my mother's funeral. And then I was diagnosed with invasive cancer. And again, that was in a
Mm.
4 month period of time. And I, my head was spinning, and I couldn't quite process things. Um, and then, all the while I'm a stand-up comedian. And so
Right.
I'm although I have a sense of humor, I was a little backed up with my sense of humor. It was hard to get into real time with it and find any levity. But I had this show booked, and I had called the owner of Largo in Los Angeles and just said, I don't think I'm going to be able to do the show. I'm at a breaking point. I was just diagnosed with invasive cancer, and he knew everything that had happened previously or prior to that. And he said, I think you should keep it on the books just in case you decide you want to get on stage. And I was like, are you hearing me? I was so confused by his reaction. And then I just said, fine. I said, keep it on the books, but I'm pretty sure I'm not going to be there. And then as the days inched closer, which was only a couple of days, I did feel like maybe I will go on stage. And I was flipping back and forth between, do I just tell people what I'm going through and try and make light of it? And I talked to good friends of mine that are very well known, well respected comedians that had been in and out of the hospital dealing and like holding my hand through all of this horror. And they were saying, do not go on stage and talk about this. This is not going to be helpful to your state of mind. They were trying to be protective. And I was like, okay, yeah, maybe I shouldn't talk about this. And I kept fighting it. I was like, it feels so weird though to not mention it because I was deathly ill. I was devastated to the deepest degree. And I didn't know how I could get on stage and just say, oh, you know, I had a weird experience at a restaurant recently when all the other stuff was going on. And so I decided last minute, I am going to do it and I am going to talk about what happened. And I was in the shower right before the show that night thinking, how am I going to walk on stage and get into all this? And then it came over me that it would be kind of funny and dark to just walk out on stage and say, hello, good evening. How's everyone doing tonight? I have cancer. Any birthdays? How's everyone's night? And so that's what I did. And it just exploded. People started tweeting and blogging and telling friends and I just had no idea that it was gonna explode the way that it did.
It literally brings tears to my eyes because any one of those things would be enough to
Yeah.
level like any person and would be enough for someone never to pull the covers over and come out of bed ever again. Like those are significant, traumatic, horrendous things. And when you were telling the story, I was also like, how is that what he said back to you? Keep it up. Like, does he have any empathy? Is he listening? Does he have hearing?
And
Like,
I know he loves me and he's a
right.
good friend. And he was actually by my side when I was having my surgery after my mother died. He was the one, the owner of Largo was sitting in the waiting room with my
And so
aunt.
it was like, is such a gift of a response. And
Mhm.
then you doing this, I think it brought tears to my eyes because how many humans don't believe that their authentic full tilt boogie self in the moment would be enough, not only enough, but that it would like draw people to you
Mhm.
because we all see ourselves in a person who's multi dimensional and going through lots of real things, but no one usually does that
Mhm.
ever. And then there you were. So
Well,
what
I
happened?
didn't know or believe that it was going to draw people to me. I knew quite frankly that there was a chance I was going to go on stage, share all of this
Yeah.
painful vulnerability, and that people would be staring at me like, I paid $30 to hear this. So I still to this day feel like I had the exact perfect people that were in that audience that night. And I, every now and then over the years, I think I've run into 3 or 4 of them where they come up and they're like, I was at that show. I was at that show. And I'm like, oh my, I feel like I know them uh, when they come up to me.
Yeah, that's amazing. And you then still went through all of the stuff that you were dealing with, and
Mhm.
in going through it, was there anything that you felt like you wanted as a result of going through all of that? Like you had clarity on, here's how I want to live my life more aligned, here's how I want to be even more, and then did that impact your work?
Well, I remember when it was happening, I kept making jokes to people saying, oh, you know, I know people that go through this kind of trauma have big awakenings or a big wake up call and they change their life. And I used to laugh and say, oh, I bet people in my life are just like, I, I just didn't think or feel like I was somebody that needed a wake up call. And I felt like the people around me, it wasn't like my life was off the rails or I
Right.
was, you know what I mean? Like, oh gosh, boy, does she need a wake up call. But I wasn't off the rails. However, and I'm not saying um, this is what people need to go through to have a wake up call, but it was a wake up call. And it took me probably a year to realize the fact that it was a wake up call and to the degree that it was a wake up call because um, it, you know, you can't help but be pushed to the edge of the earth
Mm.
and just held, you know,
Oh
by
my
your
God.
collar. And then the fact that I was yanked back and I got to see what I saw and I was yanked back and I've lived 10 years now since then. Um, it's hard to not see things differently and walk through the world differently and treat people differently and treat myself differently um but it's also oddly human nature. I'm finding that you fall into old patterns and I try and wake myself up from those old patterns too because I always thought, okay, you go through this, you get your wake up call, and then your life is different. But what I've found and what I've experienced is you have ongoing wake up calls. And I think once you have a really deep, intense one, like the one I did in 2012, I saw the edge of the earth and I got yanked back. But because I'm human, I get stuck in these old patterns or things start to get just the, you know, the monotonous humdrum old patterns. I feel lucky that I have that awareness and I try to stay on it where I wake myself
Yeah.
up and I pull myself back and I'm like, what are you doing? Why are you doing things like this? Do you not remember? How is it that I fell into acting like this again or doing this way again? Or, you know, and I used to get down on myself and I was hard on myself about it. And then I just realized that's how people are. But I do feel, I mean, not everyone, but I do feel that bittersweet thankfulness of what I went through. And it's hard to really talk about that in depth because there is the loss of my mother in there. Um, but I'm very thankful and I'm appreciative and it has made me very aware of the power of connection and communication and and to continue growing, whether it's as a person or as a comedian, just you have to keep moving, which is what I had to do in that time frame, and even in the little tiny steps of getting up to go brush my teeth when I had cancer in my body and my mother was dead and I was instantly single, and it was hard to get up and do anything. And so it changed every element of my life, to say the least.
It's incredible how you not only could brush your teeth or even just get up and breathe in and out, but that you then brought so much life to so many people during and since that. Like that's like what a incredible testimony to who your mom was. You know what I mean? Like look at
Mm.
like that's in it that's unusual. That's being a unicorn. That's not like surviving, first of all, is hard enough. And then to bring other people up, the amount of ripple effect, the amount of people that you have touched, that you have made laugh, that you have helped to believe, like it's ridiculous during and since something as big as that. It's just, it's huge. I think you should pull over to the side of your life every day at 4 o'clock and be like, good job, Tig. You deserve a gold star. You are unusual and amazing. And you're an elf from another planet.
You're kind.
No, it's true. It's true. And I am going to ask you about being so good, such a good person, because a lot of the listeners of this show write in with a similar question because they're good people. There's a lot of good people who listen to this show and they say, part of the reason I don't want to be successful with whatever my thing is because I feel like if you're successful at some point, you lose your integrity. Like the bigger you are and you have all of a sudden, you own this brand or you wrote a book or you're on stage, like, do you get mixed up with the wrong people? Does having money make you a bad person? And I feel like you're a good person to ask that to because it's so undeniable that you're a good person. Like nobody could, first of all, I don't know how people could not think you're funny, but even if somebody said you're not funny.
Oh my gosh, so many people think I'm not funny.
Well, they're weird. But even if they did, there's no way they can say she's not a good person because it's just like, it's so glaring. It's like, I'm good. I'm a good person. So how do you say to someone that there's a way to be your biggest self, whatever that means, to show up and have a successful life, meaning you're making an impact, you're doing all the things that you can do without having to then become a jerk just because you now have money or fame or anything like that?
I mean, I don't even know. It's again very kind. All of the things that you say, and I do strive to be a good person. And I've, as I mentioned, I'm human. I fall into old habits and traps, and have made my fair share of mistakes. But I want to always do better, and I think that part of moving out to Los Angeles, it's really different than how a lot of people end up in Los Angeles. And it was really, I didn't move there to be a comedian. I moved there with my good friends who are still my closest friends, and we've been tight for decades. And the cabin I'm in right now is Beth's cabin, and she's my childhood friend. She's the godmother of my children, and she has this place up in Washington, and I think that I feel very connected to where I come from, and I'm very much, connected to where I come from and the people that I love and who love me, my family, my friends. And I didn't move to Los Angeles or pursue stand up in a typical way or take a typical route. And so I don't feel like I get lost in anything, because a lot of the pushback or the side swipes that I've gotten, it's like, well, you do your thing, I'll do mine, or that's not, we're playing a different game. I'm just doing stand up. I remember people would always say, what is your ultimate goal? And then what? And then what? And I would always be like, wow, then I want to be a better stand up. Then I want to do bigger theaters. Then I want to, but it wasn't a matter of, I'm going to move to Los Angeles and I'm going to reach the top and I'm going to destroy everybody in my way. I happen to have had a very successful career, and I love my career, and I love getting to do all these different new things and decide, oh, I want to do this, I don't want to do that. This is fun, this feels good. And so I feel like I feel somewhat centered in my purpose, and so it doesn't make me want to
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
I just
No, it makes total sense. The idea that, like, going back to that story about your mom saying, like, they can go to hell, like, you feel seen, you were seen, you are seen. You didn't need to be, you weren't seeking that. It wasn't like, everyone must see me because I don't feel seen. I need the most people amount possible so that I finally feel seen and validated. You just are who you are, and that was what was going on. There wasn't that gaping missing piece.
I mean, there was certainly, my stepfather did not see me until after my mother died. But
wow, that's a long time.
But I love him, and we're close and we have a nice relationship. But it took a long time, and not that I didn't care about his feelings or thoughts or ideas, but I think I was more connected to my mother, who was this free thinking, free spirited artist that was just like, screw them all, In fact, even to my stepfather, she would tell him to go to hell if he didn't support me. So,
but it's nice for people. One of the reasons I started the show was to show people a different possibility. And it's nice to see that there's a possibility that you could be in integrity and get to do things on a bigger scale. Like, that doesn't have to be a foregone conclusion, that the more people fill up the stadium, you're going to lose more and more of yourself, because that's not the case. And I just knowing just a little bit of a sense of who you are, it seems as though you probably have friends who are your childhood friends, and also in Hollywood who you probably found the ones that are grounded and like you, who were able to be successful. And I'm not saying that everyone's like that, but
yeah, I was going to say, trust me, I've come across
a few bad apples.
Yeah, I have come across a few of those, and I'm also very, quick to get myself out of that as soon as I sniff it out.
Well, speaking of some of the good apples, you have two podcasts, and one of them, because we had Cheryl Hines here, which was wonderful. We talked a lot about your show with her, but you also have Don't Ask Tig, and you've had on Rainn Wilson, Martha Beck. Both of those people have also been here. The Indigo Girls, I would love to meet them. Ira Glass, Glennon Doyle, Maya Bialik. So what made you want to, you're already very busy. Like, why? And you have two podcasts. What made you think, like, I want to do that? Like, and what do you love about doing it?
Oh my gosh. I mean, I do enjoy talking to people, and I feel like it's such a way to learn about others and yourself, and it's just it's such a crazy thing that this is a job and that there's a paycheck. it's really something. But and
You're
that
so
is
good at it, by the way. I feel like I know I've given you 95 compliments, but I feel like the way you talk to people is like my favorite thing that you do. Because you're so enthusiastic about being in that moment. You can just feel it. You're like, no place I'd rather be. I like this. So it's really cool. You're really present. There's like a real I don't know that you haven't mentioned that you've done like a ton of like mindfulness or meditation, but your energy is
no.
very present. So it
Well,
just
I
makes it
am
nice.
interested. I was just telling my assistant the other day that I am very interested in looking into meditation because, when do you hear somebody come out of that and say, I really regret meditating or studying meditation, or, that's my biggest
That's
regret.
funny. Yeah.
It's kind of like when I became vegan, I was originally like, well, I'll try this for 2 weeks and just really go hardcore. And if I'm not into it, the worst case scenario is I ate really healthy for 2 weeks.
Right.
This is not going to be a heavy regret in my life. And then, so I'm vegan, but this is definitely something that interests me is meditation. And my wife and I talk about it all the time. And hopefully it's something that we will incorporate into our lives maybe this year. I don't know. I don't know.
Well, just because we're sitting here, maybe the audience will think this is interesting, but I spent 2 years at the UCLA Mindful Awareness Center, which is awesome
Mm,
because they have tons of classes. But the thing I was going to say is I just bought a week ago because I try to meditate every day for like 30 minutes, but I just bought these two little speakers. They're called Now
hmm
Beats, and I bought them on Amazon, and it's set to do 3 minutes. And you listen to these like sound singing bowls for 3 minutes. And
hmm
the study shows that it's equivalent to doing like an hour of meditation, just if you
Oh,
listen for 3 minutes. So my husband and I have been like twice a day for 3 minutes, just listening. And I feel like everyone can do 3 minutes. So I'll
I
have
mean,
my
everyone
assistant send your assistant the link.
should be able to do 30 minutes. One of the
Right.
things that I find so fascinating about what I've read about meditation is that people think they don't have 30 minutes a day to do it, but what I've read is that if you meditate 30 minutes a day, you have more time. That the meditation allows the practice itself allows for more time.
Yeah.
I, I'm fascinated by that. And so I would love to experience that because who couldn't use another 30 minutes a day?
Yeah, that's true. 100% true. So also I want the audience, because they're all over the world, I want them to know about your tour. So tell us a little, are you on tour now? Are you going on tour? Are you in the middle of it? What's happening because of the pandemic? Where are you at with tour?
Oh my gosh, I am so on tour. I am, well, tonight I'm in Seattle, but I don't know. When does this air?
Whenever you're going to want it to air. We'll move everything around.
Um, yeah, I'm on tour. It's called Hello Again. And that's the name of my tour. And I will be going to a lot of Florida dates, Fort Myers and Fort Lauderdale and Tampa, Orlando, which is Cheryl Hines' hometown, Dallas, San Antonio, Phoenix. I mean, it's like a 50 city, Chicago, Milwaukee, Madison, Minneapolis, New York, Honolulu, Houston, Denver, you name it. I'm going there.
And
So
what can people expect? Like, what are you hoping, let's put it this way, this particular tour, what are you hoping people leave with?
I'm just hoping people will leave with some joy because I everybody asks about my pandemic material, and I honestly
Oh my
don't
God.
really have pandemic material. I just want
That's
people
funny.
to come to the show and not be thinking about the pandemic, and I want them to be lost in whatever awkward or horrible moment from my life that I'm sharing, or lost in whatever nonsense that I'm going into on the stage, and then deal with whatever harsh reality they have to walk back into after they walk out of the theater. But It's personal stories. It's, although I'm in remission, I've had a lot of health struggles over the past 10 years. But as far as I know today, right now, I'm doing well. And I share a lot of those moments. I share my marriage and children experience and stories. And then also there's just a huge amount of nonsense that's
The
uh,
best.
swirled into it all. That's my favorite. That's why Tig and Cheryl True Story podcast exists. As Cheryl and I are, I mean, from the day we met, we've just been just foolish together. All we do is laugh. So
I
I'm
love
thankful
her so
for, I
much.
love her very, very much.
She's hysterical. I love her story. Like she was like, yeah, I was getting Rob Reiner's dry cleaning when I like went to audition for this thing that's now been 20 years of my life. It's,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
so the last question. So
Hmm.
this is the number one issue that people have is uh just people have this I don't think I'm enough to do anything thing. Like this person's better than me. And I was talking to Deepak Chopra about that on Friday, that like we live in this time where we're constantly comparing ourselves to what people post or what they do. And then people feel like, why would I write a chapter of a book? It's not going to be great. And there's already thousands of other books. Why would I get on stage? She's already doing it. She's way ahead of me. She's better. That sense of like being a fraud and not feeling good enough is the thing I wish I could just wave a wand and take away from people so they could move into their life. And
Hmm.
I'm just curious, since you've created so many things and you're around creative people, like what's your response to that?
I mean, my immediate response is, what are you doing it for? Are you doing it for yourself? And I
Mm,
think that that's what it needs to boil down to, because as much as I want people to laugh when I'm on stage, I'm not gonna say what I think they want, or I'm not gonna do things that I think people want. I'm gonna be like, oh, this moment really made me laugh, and I really want to share this with people because this is very embarrassing, or this was horrifying or scary, and this is a story I'd want to hear. And so, I mean, trust me, there's people like, I don't know if you're familiar with Maria Bamford.
oh my God.
She's a genius.
So funny.
Yeah,
I don't
she's
even know what word to use to describe
no,
her.
she's otherworldly, and she's one of my favorite comedian, if not my favorite. She's just brilliant, and I just um sometimes I see her perform and I have those moments where I think, what am I doing? I can't I'm not Maria Bamford. Why am I even doing stand up if I'm not Maria Bamford? She's the
Right.
greatest of all time. And then and then I snap out of it and I think, well, I'm thankful for that inspiration, um, because it is inspiration. But I'm not doing it to be better than Maria Bamford. And it's not because I'm being hard on myself where I'm like, I can never be as good as Maria Bamford. But I do feel that's like that's I can't be as good as Maria Bamford, but I love her and I love watching her, and but I just think it goes back to, you got to do it for yourself and not to be better than Maria Bamford or to be more
Yeah.
successful than anyone. You just have to really want to do the thing you're doing, and that can only be it.
I love that so much because the ROI is like I did it. I got to do what I wanted. Not
Mhm.
like, oh, well, it's only worth the time and investment if this and this and this were other it's like we have no
Mm-mm.
control. I mean, I was stunned. I didn't know that you were on Last Comic Standing and then didn't make it to like, and then I read that and I was like, because once I knew you were already like you.
Mm.
But who cared? I mean, and some people would have been like, that's it. That must mean, it was like, what is it? It didn't matter. You were going to keep doing it. And they just clearly didn't get it.
Yeah. No, well, and what's funny actually about that show is that Kathy Griffin was was a judge on that, and she tracked me down and got my phone number, and she called me, and she was like, "Tig, this is Kathy. I was one of the judges," and she was like, "I voted for you." She was like, "The show is rigged." She was like, they cut to angles of people not laughing, or they use different feedback for and I was just like, oh, I'm not. I honestly, and that's actually a moment in my career where I did something in order to that wasn't authentic, but the people that booked that show also booked a late night show, and they had told me that if I came on
I see.
that show, that I would be considered for the late night show. And then I ended up not getting either.
My
And
God.
so I was just like, what am I doing? I would not have normally. And I don't mean to judge people that have done that show. It just didn't feel right for me.
That's right. That's right.
So,
Oh my God. What a gorgeous conversation. You have a show tonight. You have family. You have things. This was so fun to listen to you. I want everyone to go listen to both of your shows. We'll put those in the show notes. Tell everybody where they can get tickets to your tour.
tignotaro.com.
That's easy enough. Thank you for being so great. This was so fun.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Oh, you're the best.